Hello, Tom Levecchia here with the latest edition of the New Theory podcast. I get especially excited when we get guests from New Jersey, and our next guest is a very, very special guest. Her name is Jackie DeAngelis, and she joins us from, well, let's give her a quick background before we formally see how she's doing. She's with Fox Business Network. She joined them in April 2019. And she covers like a lot of cool stuff. And I'm really interested to see how the business news and the business kind of media has kind of transformed over here. She's historically from CNBC, which is my favorite. Sorry, I like CNBC slightly better than Fox, but Fox is starting to get close, and we'll talk about that. And then she just did a whole bunch of stuff. Director of Strategic Programming. Jackie, welcome to the New Theory podcast. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So tell us about like your formative years. You know, grew up in Jersey. You know, I think you studied Asian studies. So give us kind of like your backstory. I'd love to hear a little bit more about you.
Sure. I mean, I think I had a very unconventional backstory, which is what makes it interesting. My landing in journalism, I call it a happy accident. It was never part of my plan, but probably the best thing that happened to me. I grew up in New Jersey, and I went to school in the Bronx for high school. Finished up my education there and went on to Cornell University.
Oh, wow.
In Ithaca, and then came back to this.
Hold on, she says it so casually. Went to Cornell. If I went to Cornell, I would have like Cornell here, Cornell. I got Rutgers. So
you're Rutgers. Well, I'm about to tell you the next part of the story, which is when I came back to the tri-state area, I always thought the next logical step for me would be grad school. And I thought it would be law school. I come from a family. My brother's a lawyer. My parents always said you can be a doctor or a lawyer. Those were kind of the two choices that we had. And so I went to Rutgers for law school. And while I was in law school, there was a day I had worked at a hedge fund in between for like a year and a half, 2 years. And there was a day where somebody had given Jim Cramer from CNBC my resume. I'm sitting in the middle of my con law class and my cell phone rang, and I actually got up and left class to answer it because I thought it was an emergency or something. Like nobody really called me like that. So I answered the phone, and it was Jim Cramer, and he was like, "Someone give me your resume. And I'm thinking that like, maybe, you know, you can come in for a meeting and like, we can talk about my new show and all this stuff." And it wasn't even clear. It wasn't nothing. It was just like, "Can you come right now?"
Well, that's Jim. That's Jim. Wow.
So I walked back into class and I packed up my laptop and my books, and the professor said, "Ms. DeAngelis, do you have somewhere that you have to be right now?" And I said, "Well, actually I do." And I went on to meet Jim and the show staff, and they hired me to do some research for him, sort of like a side thing while I was in school. They knew what I was doing. And that is what started my career in journalism. I ended up loving television so much. I transferred to the night program at Rutgers, and I did finish finally, but you know, it became all about this.
Wait, so hold on. So you went to Rutgers Newark then?
Yes, Newark.
So that's where I went. Although like people think Rutgers New Brunswick, I represent Rutgers Newark. So God bless there. And I think there's a law school in Camden, but the one that matters is in Newark. So congratulations there.
Exactly.
So okay, DeAngelis, Italian background.
Italian background. Actually, my dad is he's first generation, Italian American. Yeah. And my mom is an immigrant from Iran.
Oh, fantastic! So nice mix. So both, Iranians have a super educational focus, and I know Italian Americans do as well, especially if like you're first generation, because like you're the first generation, like, oh my God, we all sacrificed and now we want to get the best, right? So how did that go over finishing law school and then like, hey, I'm gonna go work? Because like even though it's a huge deal in the normal world, to parents are probably went over like a fart in church, like, so how did that go over, if you don't mind me asking?
No, not at all. Look, you're right. My parents, their focus was always on education for us. That was first and foremost for both me and my brother. And, they were so glad that they were able to provide us with the education and the opportunities that they didn't have. And that to them was, their more pride, sort of seeing it channeled through us. So when I came to them and said, listen, I was working at a hedge fund and I stopped to go to law school, and I'm derailing the plan because journalism thing is calling out to me. And you do realize my pay, working as a research assistant was like a fraction of what I was making at my previous job. Correct. They said, you know what, we're all for taking chances. We're all for trying things and finding, what you love. But you got to finish law school. You have to have that as a
but it's fair compromise.
we had that balance and I didn't quit, they said, it's okay to try it out.
Love that. And shout out to Rutgers, because I actually went to University College, which is the night school, but because I worked during the day, but I worked full time. So the cool thing about Rutgers is it's really meant for real world scenarios like yours, like mine, where you want to get things done, but you may not always have the resources, financial time commitment, etc. So I applaud your efforts there by sticking with that, but also following your passion, which is uber important. So you've been at CNBC and then you migrate over to Fox. So let's talk about how, in your opinion, obviously the media has changed over the years, the media landscape, but how has the business media changed, in your opinion, going from like CNBC and eventually migrating over to Fox?
Well, it's been interesting in my journey there. I was at CNBC for 13 years and I've been here for 2.
Yeah.
I've seen this change in journalism, business journalism specifically. When I started, it was, strict business. We lived through and covered the financial crisis, and we were looking at the markets all day, and our reporting was all about earnings and companies and CEOs. The shift that I've seen, even while I was at CNBC and more so, of course, at Fox, is how Wall Street and Main Street have blended, and how politics has started to play such a bigger role in the conversation. And part of that has to do with former President Trump and his unconventional way of doing things, but also because so much of our livelihood now as Americans, no matter what class you fall in, what category, tax bracket you fall in, the policies are so important to people. It impacts their daily lives. And we've just seen this sort of shift as we're evolving as a nation. And that seems to be how these two things are coming together. And so, I didn't work for Roger Ailes while he was here, but one of the things they told me when I came was that Roger used to always stress the fact that business runs through everything we do. It's all about the economy. And he would even say that with respect to the news channel. And so we fuse our coverage here. And I personally have loved being able to do that. It's been great for me.
So I again, maybe probably because historically I've been a CNBC guy. I just think at the time on cable, I had a little bit of prominence. I got stuck on it. I'm a big Jim Cramer guy. And then even they get sucked in they historically have been apolitical, right? Historically. But then Joe Kernan and Andrew Sorkin into their jabs. But for the most part, I've stayed apolitical. And I would argue even Fox, even though Fox is historically known to be, let's say, right-leaning, and I'm going to get crap for saying this, I found Fox Business to be historically pretty fair, in my opinion. That's one guy from Jersey's opinion. But what are your thoughts on how Fox Business handles, the business media in this current environment?
I think what we do is aim to be fair and balanced every single day. And what we try to do is look at both sides. The problem in media generally right now, in my point of view, would be that, some of the networks are so left leaning, and yes, Fox News has a reputation, for example, at night in prime time doing a certain kind of programming, but that's not what we do at Fox Business all day. What we do is look at the markets, look at where Wall Street and mainstream intersect, and think about our viewers and what they need to know to make informed investment decisions, and politics are a piece of that. And what I like to think that I do or contribute to the conversation is ask some of the questions from another perspective, to really get at it and look at both sides so the viewer can make the choice, because ultimately that should be what news is to provide the facts. And this is interesting because for me, I feel like my legal background comes into play a lot. I think of everything like I was writing a brief to a judge. What are both sides of this case going to look like? What are my arguments going to be? What are my counter arguments going to be? Could I handle being on one side of this case? And what would I do if I was on the other side of it? And that's how I look at journalism.
I love it. Now we'll get away from politics a little bit, because politics will always be there. I want to see where you land on a few things as a business correspondent, as a business professional, especially Fox Business, is like crypto. I don't want to put blockchain in with crypto yet, but crypto, obviously a big run on Bitcoin. Dogecoin got a little validity with some retweets, but where do you land on crypto? And is this something that the business community is going to have to adopt, or is this going to be a fad?
I would say it's probably going to be something that's going to be around for a while and needs to be adopted.
Yeah.
I'll share some personal perspective with you
Please.
and say I take the Warren Buffett school of investing approach. So if
Yeah.
I don't really understand something,
I don't invest
then
in it. Yeah.
I tend not to dip my foot or toe in that water.
Yeah.
And I still don't really understand blockchain in the way that I would need to be able to invest in it. And I think that as you know, to come back to Washington, as Washington takes a closer look and we start to think about regulation and what this really is and what's happening behind the scenes with it, there are a lot of questions to be answered. I also am very risk averse myself personally. So
well, that's a lawyer in you.
Yeah, you take that big risk and there can be a great big return. But I just play it a little safer.
Okay. So another one is, where do you land on the Robinhood scenario where, you know, they were, and again, my buddy's in hedge funds. So like he explained to me that, you know, hey, you have to let somebody sell, but you can, you know, stop somebody from buying. So let's assume like that's okay. But where do you land on like it generically for our audience?
I'm mixed on the issue, which is interesting because from one perspective, I look at free markets and say anybody should be able to trade. They should be able to congregate on a chat room, have a conversation and do whatever they want. Nobody said that the market was about investing in fundamentals, even though I feel it should be. You know, but speculative plays are totally something that's allowed. And there are so many people, you know, the markets have been democratized in a way by all of these different apps. And so they can play it however they want to. Add the layer of the fact that Robinhood had to put restrictions in place that changed the game a little bit. I actually don't think that Robinhood sat back and was colluding with hedge fund people and trying to restrict. I think Robinhood just never expected this to happen. And when they got higher demands from the clearinghouses, they needed more capital to shore up their business, to back up the trades. And they had to put those restrictions in place because I think the whole thing just got a little out of control. Having said that, I would also say, having, you know, studied the hedge funds, having worked there and understanding how sophisticated they are, and knowing that a novice trader doesn't have those tools at his or her disposal, I would say I really kind of push for investor education. If you're a little guy getting into this market, I would never want to see you get burned. And unfortunately, on the way down, some of the little guys did after the peak. So that's where I you know, I kind of want to see some controls to protect people while they're getting more and more into the game, if you will.
Yeah. One other thing is, and if you're not as familiar, but I think you might be, NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Are you familiar with those?
Yes.
Okay. Because here's the thing. The reason why I'm asking this stuff is because I know your background, you're super smart, you're great, and you're normal. Like you get it, like legal background, I could tell you approach things systematically, and we're in an abnormal environment. So what do you think about NFTs?
I understand them less than I even understand blockchain. So I will be open and honest about that. From what I understand, you know, you're literally buying these, we've seen them like they're pictures of art or pictures of a certain flavor of Pringles. And I think it's interesting. Anybody can spend their money on whatever they want. In some cases, these funds are being donated. It's like buying a donation and almost, in my opinion, like getting a certificate for it, I guess, if you will. But I'm like back to the Warren Buffett thing. Like I drink Coke, so I know what Coke is.
Correct.
You know, I do certain things and I like things that I can touch and feel. I happen to be personally like a sneaker collector. I love sneakers.
Oh, you're sneakerhead. Wow.
Yeah. So one of the NFTs was like, you could spend hundreds of dollars on a picture of these really cool sneakers. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just go out and buy a pair of real Air Jordans that you could wear? I mean, yeah. Correct.
I love it. All right. So before we conclude, because like I said, I'm super excited. We'll put a link to your page. People have to check. So walk us through your role before we get to that. Plug yourself a little bit because you've been great with your time. You're not easy to interview. She's a big deal once you check her out. But you can tell she's a big deal just by listening to her because we love her already over here in New Theory. Tell us a little bit about like what you're doing at Fox and plug yourself a little bit.
Sure. So I've only been here 2 years, and obviously it's been an interesting time. In the second year, we've been under pandemic conditions. If there's anything you need to know about me, it is that I am a cautioned risk taker. So I weigh both sides of the coin. I take calculated risks. One of them, for example, was my first assignment for CNBC to get on the air. I moved to the Middle East because that's where they needed a person, that kind of thing. And when it came to the pandemic, I made the decision, given my personal circumstances, health, background, et cetera, that I was going to come into the office every day and do my thing here. And it probably ended up being the best thing for me because it gave me a routine, a sense of normalcy, and I got to do things that I wouldn't normally ever get to do. So one of the things that I've been doing a lot right now is I've been rotating within different spots and anchoring, and people will tweet me and say, we don't see you on the air during the day anymore. It's because I have been having the amazing opportunity to sub in for a lot of these shows. So like last week I did mornings with Maria. This week you had me at 5:00 on our new show, Fox Business Tonight. And, I've had an opportunity to sit in for Neil Cavuto. I mean, these are people that I've looked up to for my whole career. They're my mentors. And so it's been this amazing period, a shift for me, a chance to learn more, to flex new news muscles for myself.
Well, what's interesting is, and I'm not going to get into politics of the each, but you generally see really strong people go from CNBC to Fox. Yourself, Maria. I don't know what Charlie Gasparino. I don't think he's there anymore.
He's with us. He
went over.
With us. We've got Liz Clayman. Neil was at CNBC a long time ago.
Melissa, it's bothering me right now, and I know she may not be there, but Melissa
Francis.
Yes, and a whole bunch of strong people. So it's interesting that I think Fox Business gets overlooked. So before we conclude, actually, one more question before we conclude. So what question didn't I ask you that you wish I did?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I guess what I like to do when I'm not working.
Yeah, which is probably not much, right?
No, it is a lot. I like to try to find work-life balance. I'm an athlete. I love to run. I love sports. I love working out. Anything in the park these days makes me very happy. I'm an avid golfer, and I spent a lot of time during the pandemic, as long as the weather was permitting, out on the golf course.
Beautiful.
So, I've been taking this time to I've enjoyed it in a way, because I'm a little bit of an introvert, and which you wouldn't expect maybe because of my job.
I was going to say, yeah.
I've taken the time to spend time with my family, spend time with, a limited group of friends, and really just enjoy that and cherish it, because there's so much in our day-to-day normal lives, as we would call it, that, where we're too busy. We don't have time. We don't make time. And this has been a nice time to, stay healthy and try to do that. And also to practice some self-care.
Yeah. And then that's super important. So in conclusion, because I always try to conclude, right? But when I have a really great guest like you, I have super ADD, something pops up. I was like, ask her one more question. So tell Emily, you're a great guest. I need to maximize your time. So my I guess my final thing is, with the pandemic, and again, if you're an entrepreneur like me, small business owner, Fox Business is not. And if you think it is, you're almost like not giving it a chance. It's meant for your entrepreneurs. It's meant for your small business owners, because you got to watch to see what the markets do. Because what the markets do, the financial markets follow. And then when you need your line of credit, when you need your PPP and all this other kind of stuff, the genesis is from there. It could be predictive, but also gives you some great advice. So Fox Business, we love, right? I also would like to know is, let's say you wake up, whether it be in your email, old school newspaper, digital, what are some financial resources or business resources you recommend to our audience that you maybe take from 6 a.m. when you wake up before your jog, on email, all the way to closing your phone at night? What are some resources our people could check out that you endorse or use yourself?
Listen, I go back to my Warren Buffett way of investing. The resources that I use are very basic, but I get everything that I need from them. So the first thing that I do when I wake up in the morning is check the Wall Street Journal. Just do a regular spray of what's happening in the markets and also in politics, and what are people going to be talking about today. The second place I love to go is the New York Post, because it's my guilty pleasure. I get some news in there. The business section is actually really good, but you get an overview of what sort of people are looking at that aren't necessarily hyper focused in the business community overall. And then of course you have a little Page Six, which is my guilty pleasure there.
I love the tea. I love sipping the tea as we speak. I love the tea. So I can't go. I'm with you on that.
And I love to see what the post cover is that day, because a lot of times they make me laugh. My third resource is Yahoo Finance, which is free. Yes. And I find it to be a really good way to check the markets, check stocks, see what's trending. They have sort of like a very good beat on that and a following. And I had a brief stint where I was anchoring a show for Yahoo's digital network as well.
They still have that show? Because I used to love it.
Yeah, no, they're still on. They're still streaming. They're still doing their thing. So that's a resource that I use. Nice. And then of course I use our internal resources as well. But I sort of really feel like it's limited. But those three things kind of give me everything that I need in the morning. And then of course, I'll go to the Times if there's something I need to read there, and I'll go to the Washington Post. But those are not my go-to sources.
I love it, and you spread the gamut. So,
and I want to say one more thing.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Regarding Fox Business, what I think is so great about our programming is that, look, my parents watch whatever channel I'm on. So they used to watch CNBC, and now they watch Fox Business, although they are big Fox News fans. And they say, we love the fact that we get to see you on Fox Business, and now we're watching this all day because we get a little bit of everything that we need. It's not just so market focused that it's programming to a small section of the country that's, investing hedge fund investors. Correct. But like you said, for the small business owner, talking about rates and talking about the markets, talking about government, talking about all these different things and blending it together to be more informed, because that's really what it's supposed to be about. Right.
And that's amazing. So like I said, and again, I have to preface this because I'm going to get crap, and it's okay. That's why we have the show. We have to trailblaze. We got to be moving forward, not behind. So regardless of where you land, okay, on the political spectrum, and don't get me wrong, there may be a show or two that may be leaning one way or another. That's everywhere. Get over it. In terms of Fox Business, I love it because it is credible. They have some great resources on there. And then to be honest, I would say the last 3 to 5 years, including Jacqueline, they really stepped their game, because 8-10 years ago, to be honest, I don't know if I could say that. I kind of felt it was stodgy. I felt it was for the older Wall Street white executive. Now it's like diverse. Now you have a different, schools of thought. And I think it represents American business. So Jackie, how can people find you?
Well, they can find us on traditional TV. You can also sign in and be watching it on your phone using your cable subscription login. And, we post our clips online. So for example, if you want to see some of the work that I did on Mornings with Maria last week, you can go on the webpage, and there's 5 or 6 segments there. And each show is doing that and updating it daily, so you can get a free dose of it as well. We're also working on our app. So I encourage everybody to download that and see what resources are available. And that's kind of in conjunction with how the programming has been developed. We have some new management here, new members of the team like me, for example, and we're doing new, creative, innovative things. And somebody once asked me, as a journalist, or if you have an hour that you're anchoring, what do you think it is that makes people want to watch you? And I said, well, to me, what makes me want to watch other people and give them an hour of my time that I consider so precious is that I want to rent their brain. I want to learn something that I didn't know before. I want to walk away from a show and in a very basic way. I don't want anybody talking down to me or speaking over me. I want you to break it down in a simple way and explain to me what the issues are. And I know that's what I try to do every day, and my colleagues do as well.
I love it. Final question: Taylor ham or egg roll?
Oh, egg roll.
I mean, no, it's Taylor ham or pork roll. Sorry, Taylor ham or pork roll.
Well, that's a different question.
I let a brain fart. Taylor ham or pork roll?
Taylor ham.
Thank goodness. We'll put the link to Jackie's site below. Check her out on Fox Business. Jacqueline DeAngelis. Jacqueline, thank you so much for being on the New Theory Podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.